Hello, welcome to American Baker in Germany, and today we're making a Minecraft themed cake for my niece's 13th birthday. It is going to be chocolate and green vanilla cake with chocolate buttercream. Now I've never played Minecraft, but I do know that Minecraft is all about the pixelation, tiny little squares, and neutral colors, green, brown, gray. So let's get started.
I start out stacking the cake directly onto the base of my cake carrier. I don't usually do this, but I sometimes do when I'm planning on transporting the cake myself. I fill it with chocolate buttercream, adding a dollop of chocolate buttercream at the corners to make sure the cake's corners don't droop. I had baked these in my square cake pans, but my pans have rounded corners, and nothing in Minecraft is round, so I trimmed the sides to be square. But the green layer was just a tiny bit longer than the chocolate layer and needed to be trimmed. I trimmed off the excess using a bread knife. Then I crumb-coated the cake with chocolate buttercream, trying to get the icing as square at the corners as possible. Then I chill the cake in the fridge for about half an hour to allow the buttercream to set up.
Alright, now I have basically every possible color of green and brown fondant that I had that I went ahead and got out. There's some brown. What we're going to do is we're going to cut them in little teeny tiny squares to make the pixels. And I'm going to do that while the cake is chilling because there are a lot of squares to cut out.
I have some dark green, some grass green, some teal and chartreuse, as well as some chocolate fondant.
This is chocolate fondant. I've never even worked with chocolate fondant. It smells yummy. So that's this brown. It is definitely a shade darker than my regular brown that I already had, so it'll be worth trying out.
I knead a piece of chocolate fondant and roll it out. And using a ruler, I trim one side to be straight and mark the side in 2 centimeter increments and connect the dots with the ruler again. If you have square cutters, now's the time to use them, but for those of us who don't have them, this is the next best solution. I mark the 2 centimeter increments along the bottom and cut one line to give myself a starting point for the measurements along the top. Then I connect those dots. The movement of the knife through the fondant pushes them around a little.
I'm going to pause there. I'm going to pick up all these squares that I've made. Now they've gotten a little bent out of shape, you can see that, from moving the knife through. So these upper corners are a little bit too high and the bottom corners a little too low. So that's fine if that happens. All you have to do is pick it up and kind of squish it back into shape. So it's just as square as you can get it. I mean, honestly, that's pretty square. And once you put it on a cake with a bunch of other squares, you know, you start matching up the sides and they look pretty straight, actually. I'm going to set those aside. So, do I really need that many pieces? Yes. I'm trying to cover a cake with 2 centimeter squares, so yes. This is just one color. I'm going to do another color of brown and at least 3 shades of green. And I will probably use them all.
I ice the cake one more time in an effort to get the frosting as straight as I can. Then I put it back in the fridge to chill for another 30 minutes. In the meantime, I roll out my second shade of brown and cut it into squares just like I did the last one and set them aside.
So first thing you do is you just take your little squares and you stick them to the side. You want to start on the edges. You might have to adjust them slightly. That's beautiful. Okay. If it's not quite square, you squish it up against the one next to it and it kind of squares up. Like you don't really have to do much to it. I don't know if you can see this very well because the colors are so similar. I'm just gonna go ahead and cover the entire bottom line with brown squares. I'm going to fill it in. It's just a little piece right here. Okay. That now goes all the way around. Trick to this one is to place the next one directly on top. Line up all of your seams. You do not want anything crooked or wonky. See what I'm doing? Turn it. I'm switching up the colors a little bit. I want it to look a little bit random.
I ran out of my regular brown, so I had to roll out some more and cut some more squares. Then I continued my pattern of brown around the cake. I only used the lighter brown intermittently on the last line below the top because I intend to add green on that line. Plus, I ran out of dark brown squares. I used every last one of the light brown squares I cut. I cut out gray squares and formed the number 13 with them and set the rest aside. Here you can see how large it is compared to the top of the cake.
You can see the top pretty well from there. So, I counted the squares on the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Plus a tiny bit. But it's about 10 by 10. So, I'm going to try to center this, but it's not going to center quite because my 13 is 5 tall and that leaves 5 left over. 3 on the bottom, 2 on the top, I'm thinking. Put it in the middle-ish. Now if you count across, it's also 5 across. So I'm thinking, so that would put it slightly up this way. So, 1, 2. So try to line it up. Fold squares. About there. You can also place this later or on top of a grid that you've already made, if that's what you prefer. This is just the way I want to do it today. Okay.
I place all the squares to form the number 13 on the top of the cake.
I was going to try to put her name on it, because her name isn't too long, but at the end it would still be too large to fit on here. As you can see, I can barely fit the number on. With the giant pixels, it makes it very much restricted about what you can put on and what you can't. You want to keep to the pixels. You know what, this one is a tiny bit small, it's bugging me. I'm going to take it off. I have more. And I am guessing I'm not going to use them all. That's much better. See? There. I just get a little bit of buttercream under this. No big deal. Okay?
I adjust the 13 a bit to make it line up better with the squares on the sides. Then I roll out some grass green and cut it into squares. Then I place them around the cake, filling in about half of the empty slots around the sides and randomly placing them on the top. At this point I decide that I don't want more than 2 colors of green. Also, the pixels on the edge need to be a touch rectangular to drape over the sides and cover the edge of the cake.
Here's my dark green, but it's really dark, so I'm going to mix it with some light green. See if this helps at all. That's a much nicer color, I think, so compared to the original.
I roll out my dark green fondant and cut it into squares. I use the dark green squares to fill in the rest of the gaps around the sides and the spaces left by the light green. Having run out of dark green squares, I roll out some more dark green fondant and cut it into squares. I end up using all of my mixed dark green color on this cake. I randomly place the dark green squares on the rest of the cake. Then I roll out my grass green again and cut some more green squares. Then I use the grass green squares to fill in the last of the gaps on the cake.
But a lot of the rest actually doesn't look half bad. So I'm going to use my fondant smoother, and I'm not going to spread like this like I usually do. I'm going to press like that.
My niece was very touched that I took the time to make her a Minecraft-themed cake. If I had had more time to work on this one, I would have cut out the squares ahead of time and allowed them to dry. This would keep the edges straighter. For a last-minute project, however, I think it turned out pretty well.
Okay, chocolate fondant is officially harder to roll out than I thought it would be. And it's all marbly looking. That's so weird. Look at this. Can you see this? That is not an even color. Alright, I'm going to keep kneading it for a while. Alright. Because my craft, as far as I'm aware, doesn't do marbling. There we go.